So welcome to the Haven Community Conversations, where we talk about faith, life, and everything in between. Man, this is a special episode here. I've got three other pastors here, friends of mine, and I'm looking forward. This evening, we're going to talk a little bit about small church, but guys, we may get off track. We may go into some other things. The more I thought about it, like this is really my groove, and man, we could do a part 2 and part 3. There's just so many things that we can talk about, and so we'll see how it goes, and we'll go from there. But let's start off with introducing ourselves. Can you introduce yourselves and what church you pastor at?
Krejchi Hester, St. Paul Community Church in Old Town Spring.
Yeah, the Haven Community Church, Scott Hesh in Old Town Spring.
I'm Jess Larson at Sojourn Baptist Church, just a little bit north of here, up in Oak Ridge North.
Darrin Moore, True Vine Missionary Baptist Church, Old Town Spring.
And how long you guys been in ministry?
Ooh, this is year 25. Year 25, 21 years at St. Paul.
Wow. Okay. What were you doing before that? Oh no, sorry. In the 25 years, but before St. Paul.
I was at St. Luke United Methodist Church in Huntsville. I started pastoring before I should have started pastoring, kind of thrown into the fire in the United Methodist Church because I was in Huntsville and the church needed a pastor and couldn't afford a pastor, and so they kind of threw me in, and I was just practicing on people for 3 years, and but the Lord began to pour out His Spirit upon me, and I got a little education and grew, and they moved me down south, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah.
And the Methodist Church probably hated because I moved to one church in Old Town Spring from the Methodist Church to non-denominational.
Yeah, your community church now, huh? Yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. Yeah, so I've been pastoring. I'm bad with math, but I've been pastoring since 2007. I was on staff at a church like 2005. That's kind of where I got my roots. I started going to seminary while I was there, graduated in 2009, but I pastored with Guy Glass from 2007 to 2012, and we started this church in 2012. So I've been pastoring here at the Haven since then. How about you, Jess?
So got my baby start in 1999. It's interesting. I'm celebrating 25 years at my church. So a year before that, I served as a youth pastor out in the middle of nowhere called Cossey, Texas. It's the intersection of Highway 7 and Highway 14. It's literally out in the middle of nowhere. And just spent a summer there. And then after that, came to my present church as a youth pastor. Was there for 6 years under that capacity, and then became senior pastor and been there still since then.
What year again?
So I celebrated 25 years this last summer.
At Sojourn?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm in my 26th year, I guess.
Yeah, very cool. Darrin?
All of it happened for me pretty much in one place. I got into ministry at True Vine in 2009, and then in 2011 I was the associate pastor.
Okay.
And in 2013 I was the pastor.
Yeah.
And it's year 13 now.
Yeah. Any of you grow up wanting to pastor?
No, sir.
No?
No, sir. I ran as long as I could till the Lord apprehended me.
Yeah.
From preaching.
Yeah.
And so
I had no idea I would pastor till I was about 27 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, I was absolutely did not have this on the radar. I was a kind of math science guy.
Yeah.
And hated reading, history, literature, all of that.
I still hate reading.
You still hate all that? I've grown to learn to like it, but I certainly didn't when I was younger. And so I was pursuing an engineering degree. That's the direction I was going, and I was helping out with a youth group back in my home church. And somebody just came by. Power of just one encouraging word or suggestion. Yeah. I had a gentleman in the church came up to me like, "You ever thought about being a pastor?" And I said, "No way. I hate public speaking. I would nothing to do with anything like that." And it's literally months later, and I just have a strong urging to be in ministry. So
Yeah. What
I
about you?
didn't plan on that.
Well, how old were you?
So that was my junior year at A&M. So I was in college when
Okay.
that whole process started.
Yeah, my bachelor's
I-
degree was
like nine-
graphic design, advertising. So I had no plans to go. You know, I didn't go to Bible. I mean, I went to seminary, but I didn't go to Bible college before that. I mean, it wasn't even on my radar. And my wife's got a whole other story about how it's still not quite on her radar. So, I mean, it was just like the only prophetic thing I ever heard was my grandmother when I was a kid saying, "You're gonna be a pastor," I said, whatever. I mean, it wasn't, and
To be honest, I'm afraid of people who say that they just always knew they were going to pastor, always wanted to pastor.
yeah,
I'm afraid. I think we all pretty much have a Jonah story.
yeah.
You better be careful. Darrin hasn't gone yet.
Darren's like,
I've always wanted to be
pastor.
I know his story.
I always wanted to know.
That's funny.
Yeah. But the thing was, in 2011, I had the gig that I wanted. I always thought, I never thought about being like the lead pastor or anything. I always thought I could do something, on staff someplace. I didn't mind that. And I thought I had found all of that in 2011. I didn't mind being like behind the scenes, making stuff happen.
Yeah.
I didn't care about preaching every Sunday or being seen. I don't like everybody coming to me with everything. I don't, especially like being the center of stuff. So I thought I had it figured out in 2011. And I thought I was just going to ride that on out. But it didn't work out that way.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pastor Kenny just had Robert. You know Robert. I don't know if you've met Robert or not when you came. Okay. So he had Robert speak at he was going to be out for a midweek service, and Robert was doing this evangelism thing. So he's like, "Why don't you teach at this, at our midweek service?" And Robert didn't want to do it by himself, so he asked me, and we did it. Still have it on, Sean has it on video, and we came out of that. And Pastor Kenny was like, "Y'all want to do it again?" And Robert's like, "No." And what's funny, Robert's a pretty good public speaker.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to do it, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it again." So I think the second or third time, man, I just felt so passionate, and it came out of nowhere. But at the same time, I say I felt passionate, but I would not want to go back and watch those sermons. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Those early
that
ones,
your
man,
old
they're
sermons.
cringy to me when I listen to them. But I had the passion, and that's kind of what led me, And then all of a sudden, I wanted to, I just had a hunger for another interesting thing until I was 26 is I didn't have much Bible knowledge either. It all came at. You talk about not reading. Like, I got through college on Cliff Notes, and and then right at the end of college, I got a passion for reading. I kind of cultivated it, and then it just it just came out of left field for me. So, what do you love most about the church as you guys pastor right now?
The people. I am very passionate about people. I love-
And one of the rules here is being authentic. So.
That's all I know how to be. That's all I know how to be is authentic. It's the people. It's definitely the people. I've had people ask me before, "Have you ever thought about quitting?" And my answer is always this, and I say it jokingly, but in truth, you mean this week. You mean this week. Because I've often thought about, but God has not just called me to a ministry or an assignment, He's called me to a people. And so and just being authentic, in opportunities to leave. I've had opportunities to leave. A church wanted me to come and just preach, and they were going to pay for my education and send me to school. Which was a wonderful opportunity. And And I've had years, not years, but times when I regretted not taking it.
Yeah.
But just the people, you build relationships. My kids grew up with the people, and you know their story, and you have that intimacy, and it's the people. And even as God is sending new people, I mean, people who've been there 2 months, 3 months, you just build those connections and those relationships. And so for me, it's the people.
Yeah. Darrin?
What I like most about them is how they can encourage, and you're talking about like, how cringy it was in the beginning. Like, as I said before, I did everything over there. So they remember me when I wasn't, I didn't show up there as the pastor. So they had to endure me for a while before I became whatever version of I am now. And they did. They didn't leave. They didn't put me on a timetable to say, he has to improve by this point. They were just in it with me.
Yeah.
But it's not just in me. They're like that with everyone.
Yeah.
It's always been a good church for people who are like in transition. And if you came from a tough situation, they'll just put you back together, and you might stay and you might not. But they've always been that way, and they were like that when I got there.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm not surprised when people tell me, that they have a lot of family there, or how friendly it is, because they were like that for me when they didn't need to be.
Yeah. That's good.
I would say that one of the things I prayed for when I started thinking about leading in a church was I had been to some churches that were really great at fellowship and really cared about people, but if I was just being bluntly honest, the sermons were subpar, and you just didn't feel like you were growing much.
Yeah.
Felt like it was kind of like some sort of just either a pep talk kind of thing or some sort of business meeting where we're just trying to get more people in, but we're not growing spiritually.
Yeah.
Maybe numerical growth, but no depth of spiritual growth. And so I just prayed, Lord, like if you'd let me serve and lead it in a church, I just pray that you'd make it be a people that both are loving and care about the truth, like have a passionate desire to hear the truth, to even have their toes stepped on because they want the word of God desperately. And meanwhile, they're compassionate and caring and not stuck up about it. Because I've been in that situation too, where like truth was really clear, but it was cold. Like people were just really, really cold. And so I think if I was going to say what I appreciate about Sojourn, I would say that while there's no perfect church, and so we're also not that, I appreciate that there is a desire for, I think, both truth and love.
Yeah.
Both of those. What about you? What do you like about the Haven?
I'm gonna go with Krejchi's answer, the people. But people also ask me what's the most challenging part of ministry, and
The people.
and it's the people.
people.
So I have the same answer for both. I'm a people person, and then also like to take a break from people too. I'm a introvert, extrovert. I think I'm more of an introvert. I mean, but it is the people. I can be uncomfortable in a group of people, but I also love being in a group of people, and I love our people, and I love the family dynamic. We have always had we've always attracted a lot of the unchurched. In fact, early on, first few years of the church, it was only God the reason we even stuck around and made it, because we were full of unchurched, and it was like I was praying, okay, God, I need a few more churched people, because I don't recommend the way that we started. That's a whole other story. Started our church. We definitely needed more leadership in place, so it was a while before all that stuff came. Our foundation came later. It was like we laid the foundation later, but it's also a testimony to God's grace. But man, I love our church. Just this past Sunday, in the message, I was, because I always tell our church, man, we got a great church. But we're going through Revelation, and last Sunday's message was, Jesus speaking to the seven churches, and I was saying, man, we're not a great church because I say we're a great church. I can say that all the time, but the only opinion that matters is that of Christ. But I'm biased, and I think we've got a great church. I really do love our church, but also at the same time, Krejchi, dude, you can ask Randy seriously how many times I've wanted to quit because he's one of my friends I confide in, and yeah, sometimes I've felt like over the years like a bipolar pastor.
Yeah.
But yeah, God won't let me go though.
Yeah. I understand that.
Well, let's pray. How about that? Yeah. Father, thank you for these brothers, for these fellow pastors. Thank you for this forum where we can come together and Lord, just have a little fun and just talk about these things and be real and be honest, Lord. And just we thank you for being present with us. As always, Lord, help us to be present with one another, be present with you, Holy Spirit, and just ask that you would guide our conversation and be fruitful. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
So, what comes to mind when people hear small church?
I think when people hear small church, they could hear, on the positive side of the ledger, community, family-oriented, place to get rooted.
Yeah.
But then they could also hear, low quality, not really a place. You were talking about being able to, have depth of the word and things like that. Like they assume that those things can be lacking because of size.
Yeah. That's good, Darrin.
One thing I would say is I think most people would assume in a small church that it's going to be very hard to be an anonymous person.
Yeah.
You're going to be known. And you either are there because you want to be known, or you're probably not going to be there for very long because people will know you, and that can be depending on how transparent you are, that can be a really hard thing for some people. I think there's for some people, I think going into a large church and sitting in the back pew or back row is comforting to them because I'm out of the mix and no one's. But in a small church, like, it's unavoidable. Like, people are going to see you, they're going to reach out, and you're going to get involved. So I think a lot of people think small church too, it probably means work. There's no way of escaping that responsibility.
I've had conversations with people who say they prefer a larger church because of the anonymity. They can hide in plain sight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, just to define small church, when we talk about small church, we're talking about usually churches that are under 150 people in attendance. I have had conversations with people who be like, oh yeah, I go to I say I pastor the small church in Old Town Spring. Oh yeah, I'm part of a small church too. What church are you part of? I'm part of Faith Bible and Research. I was like, that's not a small church. No, we're about 500 people. That's not a small church by definition. A small church is about less than 150 people. They actually have breakdowns: medium-sized churches, and then large churches, and then you got the mega churches. But we're all small church pastors here, and I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, since we're all since that's all the setting that we minister in.
Can I add something real quick? Well, it's kind of along the lines of this. I was going to say, and maybe you guys can add to this, what kind of expectations do you think people have when they come into a small church, especially of the pastor? And I would probably say that one significant difference between a small church and expectations towards the pastor and a large church is I think a small church, they expect that you will know them,
Yeah.
that you'll know them by name.
Yeah.
And they expect that you know when something happens in their life.
Yes. And they expect that you'll be there if something happens in their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Hospitals, birthday parties,
Yeah.
anniversaries.
But man, as I think about it, it can be a good and bad thing. Like what I'm saying is expectations. Not that we, I think probably pastoring a small church, we all realize it's family, and it's a good thing that you know everybody in the church. But man, I've had some expectations that I can't meet as well. You know what I'm saying?
I cannot. I can't do it.
Yeah.
That was a man sent from God. He was not God. He's just
Yeah.
a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't tell me, I don't know.
It has. I used to get aggravated at pastors at bigger churches. I befriend them, right? And then I'm like, hey, let's get together for lunch. Oh, I'd love that. Why don't you call my secretary? She'll get you on the calendar. And that used to irk me. But even in the small church that I pastor, I understand it now, because if we were much bigger, I think I would probably have to have a calendar. And that's something what I was referring to is sometimes people don't understand that aspect. I want to do life with people, but to a certain level, there's only so much life you can do with everybody. You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes that there's some I think proper expectations and some false expectations. Would y'all agree with that?
Yeah. I think the thing that I kind of tend to run into in my setting as people come is kind of the battle or the tug between traditional and non-traditional. People come with expectations, especially of an older African American church, a small church, to operate within certain traditions, to see certain things, to hear certain things, to kind of move a certain way. And when you start to eliminate certain things because you discover that you're just doing them because of tradition and it's not benefiting, then especially when you have guests, they come with that expectation and they don't always see it, and so sometimes it can be a good thing or it can be a negative thing.
Has that changed any with you transitioning from the Methodist church?
Everything has changed. Everything. I mean, we didn't change everything. I love the Methodist Church. God bless them. They laid a foundation, opened doors for me, and put me in position to uncover my purpose for Christ. And so I love them. And then that structure was dynamic, especially in dealing with challenges inside the church. You had policies and procedures that took all the pressure off me.
Yeah.
Having to be a bad guy, or heard somebody says this is the way it's supposed to be done, and so that was, and so we kept a lot of things, a lot of structures, a lot of policies, but at the same time, we had to shift. I think large preacher Marcus Cosby, he's a COVID delivered us from a lot of things. A lot of things that we were doing because of tradition or habit or ritual. But when COVID came and we were shut down, stuff changed.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have to pick it back up. We don't have to pick it back up. And so we've been able to kind of interject, plug and play. Does this work? This does not work. What can we do different?
Yeah, that's good.
I'd assume that it would also be a little bit different depending on if it's a more rural church versus a more urban church, or suburban. And I think the age level of the people there, the little church that I started out at in Cossey, Texas, I was helping with some youth that were there, but the congregation was probably the median age was probably 75.
Yeah.
And as a result, I came into a situation where there were several people in the church very upset with the pastor because he didn't come visit them enough. Visitation was just such a huge deal to that community.
Yeah.
And the pastor was trying to recenter the church around the word and like, hey, the preaching event and all of that. And he had some good things he was trying to do, but I don't think he was able to understand just how important a visit to their house and drinking a sweet tea on the porch was to the elderly community. And then you come into a community like this. My church is, the probably median age of people in my church are a little bit younger than me, and so life is kind of busy in general. Like me, even getting over to somebody's house, like they wouldn't expect me to come unless they asked me.
Right.
But in that community, it's a very different thing. So I think small church life can be very different depending on the demographics of the
For sure. Man, small church to small church are completely different. I mean, we share the same in Christ, but can be completely different DNAs.
But I think also just the change in the world. I mean, that was a time when, there was an expectation for the pastor to come and to visit and want it. But in today's demographic, as the churches, I guess it's getting younger. I hadn't looked at any statistics, but the thought pattern, even of the older members, is not as it was back in the day. And so it's not so much a desire for the pastor to come over and eat Sunday dinner with them. But we can go to a restaurant and we can eat, and I'm gonna buy mine and you buy yours, and we can hang out for about an hour, and we're gonna chunky the deuce, and we'll see you next Sunday. Where back in the day, they wanted you to come to their house. They were gonna eat. I remember growing up, my grandmother would feed the pastor before she fed us. And so that was just kind of that mentality. And so the world is changing. Culture is the dynamic. I think it's just really changed a lot.
Yeah. Before I ask this next question, I just want to preface by saying, maybe some of these things we have different perspectives on, and that's okay. So don't be afraid if I say one thing, if you kind of see it different, to chime in and give your your perspective. But I just wanted to ask you guys if you do you think small church, not necessarily pastoring, but small church itself is a calling or a phase? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
What you think?
I don't know if it's a choice. What I know is I was called there, but I don't have any insight to whether or not I'll stay that way.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that's hiding behind that is that if it remains that, what people really want to know is that I failed.
Yeah.
Right? Because we expect it to be a phase because, well, it's Western Christianity, right? You're supposed to grow. Everything's supposed to get bigger and better. But really, you're called, I think Pastor Hester said earlier, you're called to some people. And it may be that you may end up with more of them. But more than that, to keep from, I guess, overthinking it more than anything is, you have to decide, at least I did, I had to decide if I was going to be faithful to the call, whether it didn't, and whether the phase stayed this way or changed.
Yeah.
That was a crossroads, man.
Yeah, we didn't do, we were kind of like in a rut for the first 5. And I had to make up my mind that, when I showed up on Sunday, like whoever's there gonna get what we got.
Amen.
Which is why I'm not emotional now about if there's a lot of some of them more than there've been. I don't think much about it.
Yeah.
Because I know what the other side looks like.
Yeah.
And it could definitely go back there.
Yeah.
So I try not to be invested too much in any of that. I don't think that I'm trying to do anything to game the system either way. But I have learned that it's good for your spiritual and mental health to take it like it comes.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to. That's a good way to put it. It's one of the ways I've learned to handle it. But I've kind of had a journey with that whole.
It's
thing.
a process. I don't think anybody goes into ministry thinking that they can't grow a ministry.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think anybody thinks they go in and think, you know, I'm gonna preach and I'm going to pray and we're gonna build it and before long we'll be busting out the seams. That's the way we write it on our notebook. You know, that's the way we draw it up. But you have to get to that place where you say, it's not about me. And you have to be committed to being faithful, as Darrin said, to the call. And sometimes you do feel like a failure. And so for me now, it's more of, I focus more on the people who not consistent. They there, but they're not consistent. I don't focus on the numbers as much as I used to. I focus on, I hadn't seen you in 2 weeks. I hadn't seen you in 3, you know, are you okay? What's going on? And so those who I know are committed, those who I know are a part of the church got both feet in, but I don't see them. I focus on them rather than on the number of people who's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Those are, I just so appreciate what you guys have said. I would have told you my first year as a senior pastor at my church, there are church growth specialists. I think I became a specialist at church shrinking. I just watched people leave and leave and leave and leave, and to the point where there was no paycheck coming.
Yeah.
And we went about a month and a half, and I've just got, at the moment, it was just me and my wife. We didn't have any kids yet, and I remember praying with my wife and with the church, and it was just with those who were there, and it just became one of those things of, you know, I'm going to keep preaching and just do what I've been called to do as long as I can do it. And then if it comes to a point where we just literally can't pay for the bills and the church can't, then I guess we'll have to close it. And the Lord's kingdom is going to move on.
Yeah.
He's not, his kingdom is being built regardless if this church exists or not.
It is.
So let's get real about that.
Amen.
And then let's just be I love the word faithful. Let's be faithful where we've been planted. Let's do all that we can. And you know, by God's grace, at least at my church, like the church was able to pick up a few families, and a little bit more money came in, and by the end of the year, they were able to pay me even back for the month that I lost, and so that was really sweet. And we're still there and pushing forward, but it's definitely not a fast church growth strategy.
Yeah.
I know some places that happens, but to assume that's just going to be the way it goes, I think is probably not a helpful expectation for people to have, especially if somebody's considering ministry.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate what you guys have said. Like, I think we focus on the right things. We focus on the Word of God. We focus on loving people.
Yeah.
And then we trust Him with the numbers.
Yeah.
We care well if we're shepherds, right? We're to care for
Yeah.
souls, to
Yeah.
look after them. And that's why when you're saying, like, if I haven't seen you for 2 or 3 weeks, that's some of that accountability. And that's actual shepherding. It's actual pastoral ministry, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, I love what you guys, I resonate with that.
Yeah.
How about you?
So I first of all, I grew up in small church. That's all I ever knew. You know, my mom had me in church when I was little, but they were all small, charismatic type churches. And then briefly went to a bigger Assembly of God church when I was an older teenager and kind of, you know, wanting to go off on my own and do my own church thing. Went off to college, wasn't in church at all. And then when we got married, we got invited to a small Baptist church. And that's where I got my ministry roots was in that church. So all I ever knew, you know, was small church.
Our church.
Yeah, but we had a church that we loved. It was actually in some ways completely different than this church, but in a lot of ways, I see how that church has, you know, impacted my leadership and all that kind of stuff. But we had this great little church. Well, then our pastor got wrapped up in the church growth stuff. And we all remember, everybody who was at that church and loved it, we remember the turning point of him putting us on a bus and taking us to Corpus Christi, I think it was, to a mega church down there to watch what they were doing. And then from that point on, we came back and we're going to do big church. We got to, even though we're small, we got to think big and we got to operate like we're big if that's what we want to be. And so anyways, I knew that I didn't want to do that. I had no desire. Even when I got in the ministry, I had no desire to be I used to say rock star. I think that's a little harsh. I don't want to say everybody who's wanting a bigger church is a rock star preacher or pastor wanting to be a rock star. But I didn't, it wasn't that for me. It was starting a church and thinking it was going to go differently than it did. And it didn't go like I thought. And, our first Sunday, we met in the house with 18 people. That's great. It was wonderful. But then, you get 2 years down the road and you have a Sunday where only 18 people show up. That's different.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the mega church, but that's when my bipolar, I would be depressed on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I'd try not to show it, but
Preaching
man,
depressed.
yeah,
I've
I
been
think
there.
there was a few times I did show it on a Sunday or whatever,
been
because
there.
I have
Preaching
trouble
depressed.
I was joking about the authenticity. I have trouble not being authentic. What you see is what you get, and I can't hide it. I've always had a hard time. But yeah, my turning point, and I won't say it. It's a journey. I've come a long ways. I don't want to say I've arrived at a total contentment, but I mean it's night and day from where I was back then. As I ran across the Grasshopper Myth book by Carl Vaders, a small church pastor.
Yeah.
And he said that God, he kept saying, man, somebody needs to write books for small churches. And God got a hold of him and said, you're the one who needs to write it, And now that's his specialty, He kind of tells his whole story. He gets all the statistics about how 90% of churches are under 300, 80%, I believe it is, are under 100 people. Most people see all the medium-sized and bigger churches as they drive around, but 80% of churches are under 100.
But that was interesting to me because I think that's why I wonder why we freak out about it.
Yeah.
Like statistically, that's where you're going to be.
Yeah.
That's where almost everybody is going to be.
Yeah.
And if you travel globally, it's much worse than that.
Much worse. Yeah.
Right? So, because otherwise we would be saying that 90% of these guys are failing
Yeah.
when they are exactly where it's supposed to be. And then I think we have to also have, more of a global sense of how God sees His church. I don't remember if it was a book or it was a conference, but it was talking about church in hard places. Like the mental models that we have for church can only exist in the suburbs or in large cities, right? It is where most of the people live, but it's not where all of the people live.
Yeah.
And so I remember when I came back from East Africa.
Everybody's called to the woodlands.
You're right.
Yeah.
And you laugh at that, but I remember.
I know.
I remember when you talk about church growth. I remember when we had this great demographic shift back to the cities. Magically, everybody had been called to plant a church in the city.
Yeah.
Right. It just so happened that's where all the young families making a lot of money were, and all those people just decamped to those places. And I remember thinking, one of the most convicting things for me was going some other places and thinking, like, if we can't do church that would work here, probably shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
Like, if you need all of those things to do church, how are you going to reach all these places where God tells us to reach, which might not be all that different in places we've been sent to?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
And then you place a burden on those people because they don't have those expectations.
Yeah.
Right? We miss right what's under our noses because we.
The expectations
Please
are
don't.
usually the pastors putting
Absolutely.
it on themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're the ones that feel like failures. Carl Vaders talks about they had moved into a auditorium out of their smaller venue or church. I guess they had one of their own, and they moved into an auditorium to try to do the church growth thing, and it didn't work out, right? And so he said, man, we're going to move back into this building. He said everybody was pumped. They were excited.
Yeah.
And he was miserable. And he said the church continued to suffer for about another year. And he said it was all his.
All his.
Because his attitude, you know what I mean? When he went back, but hitting that fork in the road. And I think really just not just the statistics, but him really casting the vision for what the kingdom of God is, because there's still people confused. They associate individual church growth with the kingdom of God, you know. And he says, you know, I think Old Town Spring's a perfect illustration. These mom and pop shops, they don't want to be Walmart. They're not trying to be Walmart. That's not the point. And when you look at it that way, and if you look at the kingdom of God is we're trying to grow it out there, you know, you know what I mean? And it's not so 10 small churches, you know, of 100 are, you know, are doing the same work. It just looks different of a church of 1,000. You know what I'm saying? And so it's that's where my paradigm started to shift. And that's why it's funny, because even though I didn't want to be a mega church pastor, I would look at call them brother and sister Dole. That was the pastor and his wife that I grew up with, and I was like, you know, they're cute and they're faithful, but you know, I don't see how they, you know, when I was younger, I don't see how they, you know, could just be content pastoring their whole life in this little small church, you know. And they actually had their little, I guess you could call it a parish. They lived in a trailer, you know, behind the, you know, behind the church. Yeah. And so, but now, here I am, you know, and I'm pastoring a small church, and as far as that goes, you know, I have my other bipolar things, but I'm content about small church. That's changed. That paradigm has changed for me. Now it's, you know, other things that I might struggle. I've moved on to other things, but the church paradigm has just shifted in my mind, and so my thing now is educating other people on that sort of, you know. What you were talking about, Darrin, is like, man, to me, small church isn't broken, and I think that's a paradigm that needs to shift. The next question I was going to ask was, what do large churches often misunderstand about small churches? And Andy Stanley, y'all familiar with him? And I'm not here to diss on other guys or whatever, but I was disappointed several years ago, but I think he got enough punishment from social media and everything if you're familiar with the situation, but they were planning another church, and he did this sermon about why we plant big churches. And in that, he was dogging small churches and what's wrong with small churches and why people don't, you know, need small churches. And he came back and he repented and confessed, and people forgave him, but I think people's thing was like, okay, we forgive you, but you can't change your paradigm overnight. You know what I mean? So you need to work on changing your paradigm and understanding that small church is a blessing. They're not somebody who gets in the way. They're not somebody who's broken, you know, or somebody who needs to be fixed. It's just a different culture.
I think there are two things.
Completely different culture, really.
I think there are two things in that question. I think the first part is what you already said. There's something, what large church pastors might not understand. Because a lot of times that's really where some of it happens. Like, you know, if you're together with, you know, with other pastors, you know, there tends to be a pecking order, right? You know, where do you pastor? How many people over there? And then you watch and see what happens after that. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
And I think that sometimes that culture, you know, comes from them. You know, that we are doing something right that they clearly aren't doing because we're large. They aren't. They sometimes make assumptions that they sometimes assume that there's no way we chose to be there.
Yeah.
There must be some flaw, right? Some deficiency.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't have it, you'd be where I was.
Yeah.
Or maybe, you know, it's a hobby. You didn't go to seminary like I did.
Yeah.
You didn't get educated because if you done all that, why would you get educated to be with 100 people?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm also leery of when I come across people that want to, whether it's pastors or, well, it's usually pastors, larger churches or whatever that want to fix us. One thing I appreciate, I think Jim Harrington,
Yeah,
don't you, Darrin?
I do.
Yeah. So Jim, they work with churches and church leadership to build healthier churches, but I would have them in a second, because they're focused. They're not trying to change who you are as a church. Mm-hmm. It's focusing on church health, making you healthier. A healthier pastor. And helping. And so that's the assessments that they do. But yeah, I have run across people that want to change who we are, and it comes out of assumptions. The assumption is you're small and that you're wanting to get bigger, and let me show you how the cookie cutter way to do that.
I don't mean to go back to my time at United Methodist Church, but that was the one thing that really, really bothered me. They were always trying to send me here or put me in this, or you put me in this training, the cookie cutter, trying to show me how to do this, because you shouldn't be here. You should be here. This is where you're supposed to be, and you're not doing something right. And so I'm going to this training, and we got this coach, and I'm in this meeting constantly. I mean, every 3 months, trying to and that really bothered me.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it just is what it is. Mm-hmm. we're not sabotaging the ministry. We're not intentionally trying to suppress the membership or the numbers. Sometimes it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But you have to just be, again, back to that word, faithful.
Yeah.
And so, but other than that, I hadn't really had a lot of experience, perhaps with y'all, as y'all with large church pastors speaking negatively. Mm-hmm. But you can tell that there is, as Darrin said, that kind of pecking order.
Yeah.
That understanding. So you do have to be aware of it. I think at the same time, though, you just have to get comfortable in your skin and not become envious. Not try to become. And this is what I've had to learn. Not become what I'm not really ready to become.
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't have the gifts or the graces. I may not have the time. I may not have the structure.
Yeah.
I may not have the right people in place.
Yeah.
For it to, because I believe that as God blesses us, He blesses us in ways that He knows He can trust us to be good stewards of it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I'm doing, even in this season, I'm evaluating systems and putting new systems in and positioning myself now, because I've walked around in the wilderness and I've seen that tree, and I said, didn't I just pass that tree last week? Didn't I pass that tree last year? Meaning I'm going in a circle because not being good stewards and not operating in a system or a structure that's conducive. And I'm just speaking for me. I'm not saying that this is all pastors or every church situation, but just in my situation. And so I'm having to be more aware as a small church pastor of the necessity of not being stuck in old thinking, putting new wine in old skin, and putting systems in so that as God does increase, I can be a better steward and be better prepared to receive the people and provide the ministry, the care, and the things that are needed to maintain it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Pastor Andy Seitzma, a few years back, I don't know what we're doing, having coffee or something, and I'd asked him, how do you define success? And one of the ways we define success is faithfulness. But Andy, I like the way he put it. He said being on mission was his answer. And I think that's a good answer. Yeah, we want to be faithful, but also think about being on mission as being that's more active in nature. And I think that's a good measuring stick is whether you're growing numerically or not, are your people, are y'all moving forward on mission? You know what I mean? And I think if we're doing that, that's a huge element of being faithful. And so, I know, like in our church, I'm always telling our congregation before we leave, the benediction is we're missionaries. And now it's time. We don't just support missionaries like Randy. We're missionaries, and so it's time for us to go out. And so, like, again, it's that paradigm shift. Like once I started thinking in those terms, is like, man, we're missionaries. We are the church out there. Then I start, again, speaking for myself, like you were saying, like the Haven, which is ironic because of our name, it's usually associated with the lighthouse, is like, this to me became like, this is a lighthouse. This is the hub, where we come out and then we go out and be the church. Well, seeing it that way, it's just a total different paradigm. So then, if your church isn't growing, if you're on mission in that way, it's still kingdom. It's still kingdom minded. It's still kingdom growth. It's not about we have to increase our numbers. And for me, I've also, in fact, it might have even been last week. I told our congregation, I said, hey, the reality is, I said, I'm a shepherd. I'm gifted as a shepherd. But for me, this is something in my journey I had to become comfortable with and not feel shame around. And when I say this, some people react as if I'm being shameful. But I say I'm not a CEO. I'm not gifted to be a CEO. I was like, I've got friends in ministry. I do have friends that, so I'm not. I definitely am against dogging big church. Pastors. We've had people come in here before and they want to dog I was like, let's just focus on who we are, what we're doing. But I know guys that are gifted shepherds, but they're also gifted CEOs. For me, not speaking for anybody else here or any other small church pastor, that's something I've come to embrace without shame. I'm not putting myself down. It's just who I am. I'm not a CEO type, and I'm completely fine with that. At one time I wasn't, but now it's something I completely embrace, and that's okay. Again, grace of God, maybe He decides to grow and we get more leadership in place and all that stuff in place to account for that. Because I'm not us four no more either, but probably, if we grew to a certain number, we would just plan another church. I'd like to keep it fairly small because just in my I guess worldview for our church now, I want to keep it somewhat small, but I also don't want to stamp out growth either, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I offer an analogy? I was thinking about as you guys were talking. I think that the problem that often happens in the large church, small church thing, we might find an analogy with marriage and singleness. I think people often will see a single person and will immediately jump to action, like trying to hook them up with somebody else.
Yeah.
Because there's a problem with you because you're single. Like you've got to be married.
Yeah.
Like you won't be fulfilled unless you're married.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, like bypassing God's instruction in 1 Corinthians 7 and the gift of singleness and what God can do with a single person, and that while marriage is a gift, so are the opportunities afforded to a single person. So in a similar vein, I think there can be very well-meaning large churches that are like, hey, maybe our mission is to help small churches get to where we are, or something of that nature, thinking that like maybe we can help them along, tweak them, get them, and again, there might be some things that they could actually offer and be helpful, but if it's coming from a place where there's something systemically wrong just because you're small, that's a problem. Just like saying to someone who's single, there's something wrong because you're single. Right?
I'm convinced a lot of churches have shut down and pastors have quit, and there wasn't a need to. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's no immorality or something that, no big church division or whatever, but they shut down because they saw themselves as
Yeah.
failure, or pastors
Failure,
quit
yeah.
because they saw themselves as a failure.
Depressed.
That's what I have a passion for, is to help fellow pastors to see that differently.
I think what the larger church allows for is there's the ability to specialize. There's the ability to go after particular ministries with a lot of gusto, because you have other people who are covering other things, right? So in a small church, we all know what it is to wear 18 hats, right?
Yeah.
And you guys unclog toilets at your church?
Yeah.
And you guys, so we're plumbers.
Yeah.
I've done construction. I've done walls. I've done drywall. I've painted.
Yeah.
We do what we got to do, right? Because it's a small church, and pretty much everybody kind of chips in and does what we got to do, right? We've had work days. We get it's all hands on deck. We have a VBS that we do every year.
Yeah.
It literally requires everybody in my church for months,
Yeah.
in order for us to do it, on the level that we do it. So you have a larger church, you'll have people specialize into different areas, and so there's a sense in which a larger church is able to offer, quote, quote, more programs, more opportunities. So there's that reality, and all of us can see that, and it can be a blessing to people. And so but I want to say that it's not necessarily, though, a better thing, it's just a different thing,
Yes,
right?
that is good.
And
because I used to be, we can't compete. We can't compete with that. We can't compete with the Better Children's Program and stuff. But it's and I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's a different culture, and that's a thing too. Is being able, when people come in, if this isn't what you expected, and this isn't for you, then this isn't for you, and that's
I'm good with that.
yeah, because I don't want to. I don't want to. At one point, not that I was ever a person who was trying to be all things to all people in that sense. Is we're not trying to. I'm not going to try and keep somebody here if they're looking for something different. So if you're coming here and you got kids, which we got a great little kids program, but you've got to know what it is. We're a family type church, a family oriented church, so it's going to look different than and those programs are awesome, at other places, but we can't do that, and we're not even in the same lane as those other churches.
I tell St. Paul, I value the family type, the family model, the family style. So even if we get to a program church or a corporate church, we're still going to operate with a family dynamic. And I tell them that that's the way I think that ministry, I think that's where ministry really can be impactful in the lives, that networking. I often like to use the story of where Jesus fed the 5,000. He told the disciples, he say, have the men sit down and put them in groups of 50. And everybody was fed, groups of 50. And the large churches, they do this in small groups. They do it in small groups. But I always think of it in this terminology, this is my interpretation of that, is that when you get those groups, those numbers too big, then people fall through the cracks, not everybody's getting fed. And so that's why I believe that it's important to have that, for me, that family dynamic. It's just that accountability, that insurance that everybody's needs are being met. And when you do that, you have leftovers. When you do that, that means that it's edifying. It's edifying to the people who are serving. It's edifying to the people who are being fed. That's my interpretation of that.
Yeah, it's good.
But I would like to have the resources. Y'all said the resources of the Lord's church. I wouldn't mind having that for a little while.
And there is a I think it's Carl Vader's third book. He goes into some of the history of how American church has come to be. You were talking about urban versus suburbs and rural areas and stuff, and it really church, which I would say probably a lot of pastors don't realize this, is church has followed the culture just naturally. back in the day, everything was small church. You rode your horse, or you walked to church or whatever. Just like you go Nicaragua or something, everybody just walks to church. So it's literally is a community church, and but as these cities grew in America and became more suburban, and then when the cars were invented and stuff, people started commuting back and forth to work, and people started to move outward. You know what I mean? And then was the advent of the shopping mall and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And so churches kind of, you had to commute, to church, and so churches evolved too without people knowing it. And so some people just think church has always been a certain way, but the whole mega church developed out of that. Does that make sense?
I think it's awesome when we can all kind of learn from the best practices of each other. As you were mentioning, so I think some of the best large churches find ways to be small.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
on some level,
On some level.
they're looking to small churches and they're modeling some aspect of what they're doing
Yep.
towards small groups, or finding ways for people to
Yep.
connect, because you're not going to connect with other people within 2,000 people. Like you just can't do that, right? It's humanly impossible. But meanwhile, so I'm pastor of the same church for many years, but I've got 5 kids, and as for me in my house, it was either homeschooling or Christian schooling, and Christian schooling costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And how do we make this thing happen? And so I'm thankful, Founders Baptist Church, not very far there in Spring, not far from here. I teach over there classes in the mornings, and my 5 kids go to school there because they've got a school as part of their church, because the church can support it. The church has the capacity to do that.
Right.
And so there's still senses in which where we can partner with one another and have that kind of relationship. It can be a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
As long as we're
That's the key is partnering
Partnership.
together. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And that's my whole, just like, when I talk about mom and pop shops, I don't want all mom and pop shops. I like going to Walmart. You know what I mean? And so, there's me, what if,
I don't like
what if,
going to Walmart.
okay, maybe that was a bad analogy, but what if God intentionally, had a few huge churches, and then even more medium-sized churches, and then just, hundreds of thousands? What if that was his design, hundreds of thousands of small churches, and we can all partner together? So my passion is just not for big churches, not to see small churches as broken. We're not the little brother that you need to fix. But then also, even more so for me, is for the small church pastor not to see ourselves as broken. And that was Carl Vader's first book. It's called The Grasshopper Myth, because when Israel went into the Promised Land, came back and said, "Oh, we're grasshoppers," to these giants.
In our own eyes.
Yeah, so it's as much as how small church can view itself, and so I say we're a great. That's part of the meaning behind it, is we're a great small church. So I've had people when I say I pastor a small church in Old Town Spring, "Oh, don't call yourself small." I was like, there ain't nothing wrong with calling it small. We're small. I'm proud of it being, we're a great small church. But again, it's just mindsets. We have time to shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Y'all good? What is how does your background shape how you lead and preach? Like, we might have all come from different backgrounds. How does your background shape how you lead and preach?
Well, I can say, I guess I'll start. And I'm not trying to go back to Methodist churches, just kind of, it's a background.
Yeah.
Well, as coming up as a Methodist, I grew up Baptist in traditional African American Baptist church, Southern African American Baptist church. And so when people would come to the Methodist church with St. Paul up here, I would always hear, "Y'all not Methodist. Y'all not Methodist." As a matter of fact, I've had conversations with people who were traditional Methodists who would drive all the way into Houston to different churches because they would visit us and they'd be like, "No, y'all are way too extreme."
Yeah.
way too extreme for what what they grew up accustomed to. And so aside from us lighting the candles and doing a few other things, we didn't resemble Methodism at all. And so my background, it really shaped my approach to doing church. But in that, I've had to rethink it. I've grown, I've evolved, I had to rethink it. But it wasn't just my background is in church, it's also my background from the inner city of Houston, and now even now as a father of grown children, because I'm at 52 now. Been doing this 25 years, and so I've had to evolve with it. As the church has evolved, I've evolved, and I've seen how some things I did strictly out of tradition or out of expectation versus being edifying or being healthy or being valuable. And so I think that it's a balance. It's a thin line sometimes that you have to walk. You have to constantly be evaluating. And for me in this season, just a constant evaluation of, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and not trying to reinvent the wheel, but at the same time, recognizing that some things I did because I've always did it.
Yeah.
Or this is what is expected versus
Yeah.
doing it because it's edifying and it's beneficial.
So let me ask you: is the traditional African American Methodist church, is it more like Caucasian Methodist church? Is it more?
It's not like Caucasian Methodist church, but it's sedate. I'll put it like that. It's sedate. It's
Sedated?
Yeah,
Well, that's more like, yeah. I know back in the day they were charismatic, from what I understand. Way back in the day, my mother can tell you that there was some charismatic elements or whatever. But yeah, I have to admit, when I first came to your church, I was like, man, maybe all black churches are have that same vibe, because my wife grew up Methodist, so I'd visited the Methodist church. I was like, man, this is cool. It's like it's like got this Methodist vibe, but it's also got this, like, I don't know, Baptist or whatever vibe to it too. So I recognize that. But
Yeah.
for me, I thought it was awesome.
yeah.
But I could see if somebody's used to, they see, when you were Methodist, if they see Methodist, coming in and expecting a certain thing.
And that's what it was. They just expected certain things, and we didn't do them.
Yeah, man, I love different church cultures.
Yeah.
I love, that's that was what I loved about the unity.
Yeah.
Showing the unity when we would do community. Us three and a few other pastors, we used to have a
Fellowship,
yeah.
Pastor swap.
I wish it would have been more successful, but the idea was to come together and the pastor swap too, yeah. But the idea, I wish we could have. It would have been more successful in getting everybody from the churches there. I think it got to a point where it was a lot of the same people coming together and stuff. But I love the idea of us, taking a Sunday evening or whatever and having church all together.
I think for us, we were all so busy we couldn't invest in it.
Yeah.
And the inmates kind of started running the asylum.
Yeah.
and we
Hey, you can get in
we
trouble
saw
for
some
saying.
we saw some things that we weren't happy with, and it just got too far out there
Yeah.
to really back in.
Yeah. What about you, Darrin? You remember the topic?
I do. I do. Yeah. I remember in my ordination sermon, Bill Lawson, founding pastor Wheeler, preached my ordination sermon. He talked about why Paul was the right guy. He starts talking about, Paul was a Roman citizen, multilingual, educated, and he says, when all this is before he's converted, and he says that when God already has this plan for the Gentiles, and Paul was the only one that could have done it, right? That everything in his life up to that point wasn't wasted, even though, it was at a time when he didn't understand why any of it was happening. And I thought about that, I think that helped place me better.
That's good.
At the church because I have an MBA, and then I have I'm bivocational, and but I was also a church kid. Grew up in church, and I thought about things. You get to a point where wasn't that you didn't believe what you were taught, you just wrestled with it.
Yeah.
And I think that actually helped me at the church because, we're a traditional church with people who are a lot like that. They grew up in church. And I just made it safe for them to wrestle with stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to, like on any given Sunday, I think that, especially now that we probably have a lot of people who are on a different part of the deconstruction path or skeptics, and I recognize the fact that the things that we ask people to believe on Sunday are insane. Right? If you're in Exodus, you're asking people to believe that the Red Sea opened up and all these people walked through on dry land, and the people came behind them, it wasn't dry for them. And then all of a sudden it fell down, right? And it was all led by a guy who saw a burning bush. And because of my just all the things, I'm a trained scientist, and we test everything. The whole point is to put a hypothesis out there and test it, and not be afraid to let it come under scrutiny.
Yeah.
Right? You welcome the scrutiny, you welcome multiple eyes, because the ones that come through are the ones that are really valid. And so me on Sunday is very much that way. Like, let's put this to the test. Let's see what this does. I know what you heard. Does our lives reflect that, or something like that? I lean into the person that I normally am when I walk out of the bed.
Yeah.
When I'm about feet, I lean into that person.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think I have credibility with our leadership because I understand all these things better than they do. Like Excel, I'm at home in Microsoft Excel, right? So, I can talk to the seminarian and I can talk to the banker the same day.
Yeah.
And I think that helps. It helps me navigate all the things that we have to do, because I'm never out of my depth
Yeah.
with whatever we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but like Reverend Larson said, but all that was true before I got there. And it was just a matter of leaning into everything that he allowed me to experience or learn. Like, none of it has been wasted. And I think that's the hardest part, more than just finding your pastoral voice and your preaching voice. I haven't been successful over there because of any of that.
Yeah.
I've been successful to the degree that I have because of all the things that I thought didn't matter, mattered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Can I interject this before someone else go? Darrin said something that really kind of watered the seed. And I think once we learn how to be authentic in who we are, we draw those people.
Yeah. That's true.
We draw, our authenticity draws the people who we're supposed to serve.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah, and you draw your people.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, right? You draw people who, the part that happens is, especially when you're talking about large churches, there's always a temptation, whether it's subconscious or not, to mimic what we see, right? And then you're a poor representation of that person, but not yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the people that show up ultimately are going to be disappointed because some point the real
You're a
you,
poor man's whatever.
well, the real you starts to bleed out the longer that they're there,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you miss this opportunity because your people are someplace else,
Someplace else.
Yeah.
Yep.
because you haven't trusted
See, that's why,
that God made you the way He did.
real
for a
quick
reason.
before Jess goes,
Go ahead.
the other thing that I didn't mention earlier that had a huge impact in that in that fork in the road moment for me, whether I was going to quit or keep going. One was the grasshopper myth. The other was faith walking.
Yeah.
And in short, it's just a spiritual development. It's putting the mirror up in your life and finding all those blind spots, you know, and letting the Lord heal them. And I needed so much of that healed in me for me to be a better, you know, to be a better leader. But some of the things you're talking about with, you know, being your authentic self and embracing that authentic self. I needed that. I didn't realize I needed that because I thought I saw myself as authentic, but I realized I needed that to be comfortable with myself.
But you know, it also pays dividends that you're just not threatened by other people.
Yeah.
You know, because when, you know, oftentimes when we have other ministers come to the church, they are not like me.
Yeah.
I want them to not be like me. They already got me.
Yeah.
Right? So people who, you know, preach with more energy, or they can sing, or they, you know, they're great, you know, they're just great minds, and they have, you know, great homiletical frameworks. Yeah, come on in here. Let the people see something different.
Yeah.
Because if what they do for 30 or 40 minutes causes you to leave, then that's a different problem altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I think we were in Africa and Krejchi came over, right? You know, I've heard him preach before. I knew what he was going to do, and I was hoping he did it because I wanted them to have different experiences,
Yeah.
right? You know, so I think that actually makes me better because I just trusted that the Lord was going to do through me what he wanted done if I submitted to that.
Yeah.
And it got simpler when I was just like, I'm just going to show up as me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm
that's
showing
good.
up.
And Darrin is one of my favorite preachers.
I was going to tell you, Jess, because I know you don't know these gentlemen, but Darrin's
like
one of
we've
my
known each
favorite. Darrin's one of my favorite authors, and I've never really read anything that he's written. It's all from his preaching because he
Yeah.
preaches like an author.
He does. He
Yeah,
does.
he's so good. Yeah, he's one of my favorites as well. Man, I would love, and then we're gonna move on to Jess. But man, I'm enjoying this so much. I would love to do this again. We film every couple of weeks, so I'd love to have you guys back. And I would be even. We got more things to talk about. I mean, we got tons of things we could talk about. But if you want to come back on sometimes and you got some things you want to talk about, let's talk about that off camera and I would love to have to continue this discussion. But Jess, what about you?
Question was,
do you remember the question?
How culture has Darrin did a good job. So how culture has impacted
or even just your background in general.
Okay. So I'm sure you guys have those things where like your mom told you something and it kind of just stuck with you for a long time. And so like one of those things that my mom had said to me early on was, you learn from everybody that you meet.
Yeah.
Some things to do, some
things
things not to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that my early upbringing and then through high school and college and then eventually into the pastorate was that kind of journey where there was elements of every church that I had been a part of that I learned both some things to do and some things not to do. And so I'm very, very thankful for all of those interactions leading up to the point that the Lord's entrusting some amount of leadership to me. And as you guys said earlier, I'm very thankful that a lot of my early teaching was not recorded and will just die. I've had to repent of some of that,
Yes, sir.
Yes,
quite
sir.
honestly,
Yes, sir.
because I was
Yes, sir.
not well prepared and was saying things that were not right. And so I'm thankful for God's grace and forgiveness. I'm also thankful for, as you guys have already mentioned, of people who are patient and caring and willing to work with me.
Yeah.
I think there's something unique about, I get the feeling from the way you guys talk about your churches that they're similar to mine, that there is a tremendous blessing when you're able to pastor in a church where there's a healthy sort of proper respect that's offered, but you're not put on a pedestal.
Yes.
Such that you can fail,
Yeah.
the church can see your warts and all,
Yeah.
and say, hey, you're also a sinner saved by grace.
Yeah.
We're failing forward together, and the church forgives me and works with me and doesn't expect my children to be perfect.
Yeah.
Doesn't expect my wife to run the women's ministry and to
Yeah.
play piano and to sing songs on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff. Like my experience, and I know different people who had different experiences, and so I also want to, I know there are some men, some pastors who have had a really rough time in local churches and fights with deacons and fights with members and run out of town. And I mean, I've heard the stories. By God's grace, for whatever reason, I have not experienced that. That has not been my experience. I have been granted a church that loves me, allows me to be just a man in the church alongside of other men in the church that need to be encouraged and uplifted and cared for and loved and cherished and all of that. And so there is something that I'm very thankful for. And I'd probably go back to my very first answer about, like, when you're talking about what do you like about your church, this like dovetails into that from the very beginning. I realized that you can't just make that, right? You can pray for that. You can pray that the Lord would develop that in your church, and then you can preach towards that end, and you can teach towards that end, and you can disciple, and you can fellowship, and you can do all the things you're trying to do. But there is absolutely the knowledge inside that I can't make people love the Lord. I can't make people want the right things. I can't make this church be gracious towards outsiders. I can't make this church be evangelistic. I can't make this church want to do VBS. Like, you think about all the things that happens within a local church context. How little control you actually have, right? You're an under shepherd.
Yeah.
Jesus is the chief shepherd, right?
Yeah.
And so that drives you to your knees. That drives you to passionate prayer. That drives you to thankfulness too, right? So grateful because what's there, what we're thankful for, is God's planting. God did something amazing. So anyway, I would say that, like, I think a lot of all the upbringing and stuff, and maybe at another time, or maybe it never fits in one of these things, but like, I think there's a lot of stories we could all probably share about how we got to where we were and how all the little pieces come together to make us into who we are. But it is incredible how God will use even my engineering background stuff. I teach chemistry and pre-cal for high school students. So I get like some youth ministry-esque things because it's a Christian school, so I have to talk about Jesus. I have Bible verses in the middle of my pre-cal lesson. I get to talk about chemistry and talk about Jesus at the same time. So I get to do that, and then meanwhile also preach on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights, and just feel so very blessed. But
I thought it was a great thing that you said, because I think so much of a antidote for the depression is gratitude.
Yeah.
Listening to you talk about that, because I think about, like, there are really fine pastors who have not had it as easy as I've had it. Right, it's nothing I've done to deserve this little glide path that that on. I mean, the stuff that I go through is like a footnote compared to what many folks go through. And I think just what you said was just a nice reorientation to say, it's a lot better than it could be. I mean, it's a lot better than it should be, and it's not as bad as it could be.
I was just meditating today, and this is the other side of it. So you have that one side of it which says it could be so much worse than it is, and that's absolutely the case. And then there's the other side of it when the scriptures say, for momentary light affliction is producing for you a weight of glory far beyond all comparison, right? So the other side of it is those things, and think about it, the Apostle Paul is saying that. This is a guy who got flogged and like almost died and stoned and left for dead. And
he got the nerve to say light momentary.
Yeah, and he calls it light
and momentary.
But it's like, if he's calling it light and momentary, what do we call that stuff, right? So even our roughest days, if you think about this, I don't mean to demean a rough day, because we have rough days. They are hard. There are hard things in ministry. We could have probably a whole thing on that. What's the hardest things you had in ministry? That'd be quite
sure.
But so I don't mean to make light of those, but it is to say that them in comparison with the glory that is to be revealed through Jesus Christ is going to just swallow those things up. They're not even worthy to be compared with one another.
So good, Justin.
Amen.
I appreciate your humility. All of you, really, man. I could do this. All day. I think for me, how did my background shape who I am as a leader. Sometimes I joke that I'm the public school pastor. And I was talking earlier about how, these things, that I may have one time had some shame about, and I think one is not knowing what the heck I was doing, how this church even came to be, and definitely how we made it, with the lack of structure that we had early on. But, and then, just ministry coming out of left field, even though I was raised in church. I wouldn't have considered myself a church kid. And at the same time, I wasn't, I wasn't one of those guys in prison or, had a super rough life or whatever, but definitely a public school mentality. I don't know if that makes sense or not, or if that's too abstract.
Makes a lot of
but
sense.
yeah, and that's me, and along the way, it's kind of like, what in the world am I doing? Why am I pastoring? What is this all about? But I've learned to embrace it and realize that God has been in my story way before I was in ministry, and shaping exactly who He wanted to be, and pastoring the type of church that I do. And I believe He's used who I am and just being real and authentic and sincere in my relationship with the Lord. But I think one of you guys said that we attract, I think it was you, we attract the people. And it's not all about me. And I love what you said about being just one of the people in the church. You need ministered to, and stuff like that. And I hate calling it Scott's church. I don't want anybody saying, hey, and we do, some people do that. They associate it with the pastor and stuff sometimes, but I don't like it being Scott's church. It's our church. We're all in this together. And I know people invite people and they bring in family members, and when we do our surveys, a lot of times people put it's about the fellowship and the community that they love. So it hasn't that puts a smile on my face. It's not all about I'm far from a celebrity pastor, but it's not about my personality or whatever. But at the same time, in the journey of 13 years pastoring this church, you're absolutely right. Is God has used my personality that He intentionally, shaped in me. To, I think our church is a reflection of that. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, and so that's something I had to learn to embrace along the way, and I totally embrace it now.
I'm going to encourage you, Scott. When you're talking about like early on and feeling like, what am I doing? And like, there's not a lot of structure. There's a book I read a long time ago called The Trellis and the Vine.
Yes.
I think it's a really good analogy. Are you reading it? Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
It's a really great analogy for how the church is, Jesus uses an analogy that, He's the vine or the branches, right? But like considering the church like a vine, and the trellis is kind of like the structure that supports the vine, right?
Yeah.
And so there's some amount of structure in any church that helps support the vine, but there's a problem if all you end up doing is just creating trellis. Yeah. There's some people that is all about the trellis. So the outside, the building looks amazing, everything's in place, but the people are dying. Like there's no heart. And so like I just always love, I get the feeling I'm among friends with the three of you because I hear you talk about your people so much. And I feel like if we're not tending the vine, we don't care about the growth of the vine, it doesn't matter how much trellis work you've done, right? Now at some point, the vine gets bigger and bigger. You're forced into trellis work. Like we got to do a little trellis work now, right? But you don't just start building a cathedral of trellis when there's nothing growing, right? So what do? You tend to the vine, and as the vine starts going, we got to support. Oh, we should build something around that. Then you start creating. So I think what you're doing instinctually, Scott, is like exactly what you should be doing.
What you should be.
Yeah. And it's been a long process. One of the things that I appreciate in my friendship with Darrin, and I've wanted, this probably maybe reserved for the next episode, just talking about pastor struggles and being real and stuff like that. But I'll go ahead and say this, and then how about we close after that? But I've found that my closest friends and and ministry have been missionaries and not pastors. And why I love that, I love my friends and that are missionaries. I also have been sad, that I haven't had more friends, and they talk about, pastors are some of the loneliest people, and I have found in my experience as pastors not reaching out to each other, you know what I mean? And I don't know if I'm imagining it or whatever, but
No,
my
I would-
experience is they're so guarded.
No, yeah.
Pastors are. And I felt like with missionaries, they don't have anything to be guarded about. And they got their own set of issues and stuff. So I share the passion with my missionary friends, but they're more real, And what I appreciate in my relationship with Darrin is, the you are real, and that I can be myself. I can talk with you about Pink Floyd or whatever, those things that we appreciate.
Together.
Yeah, just because we can be real dudes with one another, and then outside of that, just being able to confide in one another and stuff like that. And anyways, I would love to see that more with pastors is coming together and having those real relationships. But I just wanted to say I think because of my DNA, the way God shaped me, my background is I am so sincere about the body of Christ and what I do, and I'm so sincere about Jesus. But authenticity is something that I highly value. So I appreciate you guys coming on here and being real and sharing a little bit of your stories. And I hope that we can do this again, just like in some of the things I want to talk about today that we're not going to, be able to get into. But, I'd like to talk about, some of the challenges that we have as pastors and the diversity in church and different backgrounds as we got into this background stuff and how pastors and churches can be more unified. I have a passion for the kingdom of God. That's why I liked our churches coming together so much, because we're not the one Catholic Church anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's long gone with the Reformation. You know, and the only way we're gonna be able to truly work together. Again, I don't want to open another can of worms now. Is that we got to find a way as churches to come together in unity. You know what I mean? Despite our I won't call it differences. Despite our variety, despite because I think there's a lot of beauty about our differences too, not just things to debate about.
I agree.
Yeah. So, man, thank you guys. Let's
Thanks
do
for
it
having us.
again. Yeah, you guys were awesome. I appreciate
Thank you for
it.
having me.
Yes, sir.
Enjoyed it.